Thank you so much for expressing interest in the Ultimate Guide to HR, the Checklist Edition. This video is going to be a how to use the Ultimate Guide to HR Checklist. We designed this to help small business owners, HR practitioners, nonprofit leaders get HR right. And we built in over 85 comprehensive checklists to help that happen, right? And so if you need guidance on understanding the employment laws affect your organizations, you need understanding on how to hire the best employees legally, managing remote workers, creating essential HR documents, properly classifying independent contractors, creating the optimal work environment for your employees to create success, right? All of that is covered in here, and we do it in a way that is approachable, that is easy, but also gives you enough information so you can make the best decisions in the workplace, right? So you can make the best decisions on the behalf in there. And so this guide, I should say, it's not a book. This guide was written by Chuck Samikian, who's a director of HR, has been doing HR for probably 20, 30 years. And myself, John Tolheimer, who's been really in the leadership, employee management side of business and helping organizations be successful. And we found that there's a common ground there and going back to the same things and having those checklists that allow us to do that. So let me show you how to use this book, this guide. This is not a book, right? I say it's a book, but it's not a book. What are you talking about, John? So here it is, right? It's a guide. We do not expect you to open this book on page 1 and read it all the way to page 329. That is not what we expect. We expect you to go to the table of contents and go, oh, I need help in this, and then that's where you go to it, right? And so going through that becomes really important. So let's go look at that page of contents so you can kind of see what we have in there and what we can do. And so one of the things we've done with this guide is we reached out to some of our friends in HR, friends in our leadership positions, and sent it to them and said, tell us what you think. Tell us the unvarnished truth. We want to know if it's doing that. We were really surprised that it came back at a really high level of, this is a book, it's a must-have, it's a great example of a good resource that has many uses. And, you know, it's funny because it's sort of the book that Chuck and I wish we had when we started out, right? We wish we had that in there, and we wished everyone had that as well. And so we wanted to make sure that we got it out and did that. One of the things that we're really excited about is that we were able to partner with SHRM and provide the people that purchased this book 3 certification credits from SHRM, right? And so if you have your SHRM CP or your senior CP, senior certified professional, then you too can get those 3 points and you can continue your education on there as well. And so that approval was really heartening for both of us as we kind of did it. All right, so here's the contents, right? And so you go through these contents and you kind of look at it. So we have a chapter on, or section on, how to be successful in HR. We have one called the Human Resources Foundational Documents, where we dive into the handbook. We dive into different checklists in terms of documentation reminder, job descriptions. We have one section just for hiring employees. How do we do that? One of the things that we did in there is we created the 30 questions to avoid checklist and the 30 questions you may want to ask, right? And so we wanted to give you a leg up. And get the questions out there and do that as well. Hiring independent contractors, that's really big. How do we hire individuals that should be independent contractors? What do we need to be thinking about there? How do we reward our employees? This is a big one for all organizations. Are we rewarding our employees properly? And so we talk about the employee pay checklist. We talk about managing the benefits. We talk about creating a leave policy in there, training pay checklistness. We even have a request for time off form that you can use as part of that. We know that employees are successful when the work environment matches them, right? And so kind of figuring that out. So we put a lot of thought into what are those, how do we create that best work environment? So we have things for workplace investigations. We have race and color discrimination prevention checklists. We have holiday party legal considerations. And then one of the new ones we added in is difficult conversations, because in my work as a trainer and a facilitator and a coach, that comes up a lot. How do I have a difficult conversation with an employee? And so this gives you the checklist and the steps to make that happen. Right? And so managing remote workers, right? We all know most organizations have at least one remote worker. How do we manage them? How do we do that? Improving employee performance. So we have PIPs in there. We have how to create SMART goals, how to do a termination if necessary. We also have the exit interview questionnaire. And we also have a stay interview, right? And I always find that stay interviews are much more powerful than exit interviews, because we're doing it for the people that are staying. Why are they staying, right? Asking them those questions and doing that becomes important. So let's look at one of the checklists. I accidentally clicked on it, but let's look at one anyway. And this is the ADA Interactive Process Checklist. And so in each checklist, we have the purpose, right? Why did we put it in the book? What does it do for you? Kind of that. And then we put in the definitions that we use in the checklist to make sure that you understand them. Now, you may be an HR pro and you've been doing HR for 25 years and you're like, I got those, I understand it. Or you may have just started out in HR and you're like, wait a minute, what is the ADA? I don't understand. How does that imply with me? What is the interactive process? What is an undue hardship? And so just kind of defining that for people as we go along, we thought was really important, making sure that we do that. And so look at this, right? And so what we do and what we made this checklist, we made it interactive on purpose. We wanted you to use it, come back to it again, come back to it again, come back to it again. So each one of the check boxes in the checklist in the guide is actually checkable, right? So we can actually check it or uncheck it depending on where we are. And so what I typically do when I'm using it in my work is I will go through and click off all the things. And then when it comes to time to save it, I say, don't save the changes, right? Don't save any of the changes. So the next time I go into it, that checklist is there, right? And so if I'm going through this and I'm looking at this, recognize an accommodation request, have I trained all my managers? Yeah, okay, we did that. Did we fill out the accommodation request form? Gosh, I haven't done that yet. I'm gonna make sure we do that. Now we're gonna gather information, confirm state and federal ADA requirements, so making sure that we know what they are. We're gonna pull up, right? If you're doing an ADA claim, you've got to look at the job description and what does it say about qualifications? What does it say about work context, right? And making sure that you know that when you're having these conversations in there. Talk to your manager about essential of the function. And then document, right? We all know when we're doing the interactive process, one of the critical things is to document that process, right? Document the conversation with the manager, document the conversation with the employee, with the witness, with the accused. We want to make sure that we're doing that. And so you're going to gather information and then you're going to explore accommodations. And so there's many different ways to do accommodations, but you can explore them and kind of look at that. We have all that list in there. And then we're going to choose the accommodation, figure out, okay, what's the right accommodation in there, implement the accommodation, monitor the accommodation. And then also we put in the back of this, we didn't want to create a whole nother checklist, but we put at the end of this is what do we need to train our managers and supervisors in, right? And so that becomes really important, trying to think about, okay, what am I training my managers in? What am I trying to do? And so that's just one of the checklists, but you can kind of see how you can use it to do that particular thing. And what we have found in our work is that a lot of small businesses may not face an ADA claim very often, right? And so now they're going, oh gosh, I need to start an ADA claim. What's the interactive process? I know there's something we need to do, and this gives us a place to go. The other benefit of checklists, and I want to go to another checklist, but as I do that, I'm going to be talking. And so one of the benefits of checklist is that as HR practitioners, small business owners, managers and leaders, we get tired, right? We get worn out. We get emotional. We're having days at work that maybe are just overwhelming. And we're doing something and we need to get it done, and we're trying to do it by memory, 85% of the time you're going to make a mistake. You're going to forget an important step. You're gonna focus on something that you shouldn't be focusing on, right? And so the checklist becomes that place that I can always go back to, and it really grounds us. It gives us that moment to go back and go, okay, what do I need to do? Oh yeah, I need to do that. Got it done. Okay, I need to do that. I can cross off that checklist and do that. One of the newest checklists in here, and this came from our podcast listeners, our clients, our Facebook group members, all of those people were like, at the beginning of this year, for some reason, it was just like, hey, does anybody have an HR calendar? All those things that I need to do throughout the year, does anybody have that? And people are like, well, I got kind of one, and I got kind of one, and that kind of stuff. And so Chuck and I just started talking to each other, and we're like, we need one of those. Let's build that up. And so I really spent a couple days researching what should be in a calendar that will allow people to kind of make sure they're doing what needs to be done every month. And so in this checklist, right, I have monthly reminders. What do we need to do? This is not only for human resources, but I also incorporated payroll stuff in there as well, because we do a lot of training in that payroll world. And so each pay period, do a spot check on employees' pay, run on all active employees, run a report on all active employees, ensure all active employees have the appropriate files, right? And so kind of doing all those things. What do we need to do in January? We know payroll is really busy in January. There's so many forms, so many things to get done. We don't want to miss any of them. What do we do in February? What do we do in April? What do we do in August, right? And so September is coming up. We're going to celebrate National 401k Day. I just wanted to put it in there to do that. Celebrate HR Professional Day, which is coming up September 26th, right? And so kind of making sure all of those things in there all the way through December. And it gives you a place to go, right? It gives you that stability or that confidence that you're not missing anything. And that's what I think is really important about this checklist. It really does give that confidence. Now, one of the things that we found out, or we kind of knew when we were going in building this, is that we wanted to make sure that this worked for everybody. And we know people from Portland, Maine, down to San Diego, California, up to Fairbanks, Alaska, all the way down to the Florida Keys are using this book. And so when we were thinking about that and we were looking at it and going, all right, if all those people are using it, we need to do something about state. We need to make sure they have state resources that they can use, because everyone knows, right? We have federal employment law, and then we have state employment laws. And so we need to check that out. So if you go into the index down here, you'll see on page 312 all the state resources, right? And so let's click on that and look at it. And so look, we have, if you're in Alabama, you can go to the labor.alabama.gov. It gives you the commissioner's address and their phone number and all their information. So you can ask them questions. And so you can get the information you need to be a successful HR practitioner there. The one thing that I will call out is a lot of times, in fact, this was happening to me the other day. I was working with a nonprofit in Nashville, Tennessee, and we were talking about building their employee handbook. And I was creating their employee handbook for them. And I'm like, all right, do you have any remote workers? Are you all just based in Tennessee? And they're like, well, we have one in California. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to have to think about what do we need to do in California. And so I was able to go here and reach down and go into their website and get more information. So make sure that the employee handbook covered all of those things, right? And so I wanted to make sure that we had that and we were doing all of that. The other thing, and this one really came from the mind of Chuck Samicki, and I'm a smart guy. And he's like, you know what? Let's do this in an alternative checklist groupings. So employee life cycle, the remote employee team series, benefit leave series, the audit series, the payroll series, right? Because sometimes we're not looking as authors, we may not be approaching it the same way you would approach it, right? You're like, well, I would put that one in this one, and I would put that one in this one. And so it really allows you to dig that in there. We also put them in alphabetical order as well. We wanted to make sure, like, okay, I want to do it by alphabetical. we're going to do that as well. So all that is in there as well. You wanted to make sure that you had that. So we're really excited. Hopefully that gave you enough information to kind of understand how you're going to use it. We think it's really a benefit thing. We know people are using it across the United States. We're excited for you to get a chance to use it as well. So go back to the page, go back to the Ultimate Book of HR Checklist, the Ultimate Guide to HR Checklist, go buy it. Go buy the book right now, and make sure that if you do have a code, you use the code, so you're going to get that discount price on there. But it's $69. It's a pretty good bargain. And so take advantage of this. And I hope to reach out to us. We want to hear your feedback. That's one of the things that keeps us going, is that interaction. And if you haven't already, definitely check out the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story.